Hi, it's story time today, and I have a story today called The Big Orange Splot. Take a look at the roof of this man's house. That is a big orange splot, isn't it? And if you look at the words in the title, I bet you know some of them. You know THE, right? The. We could sound out the next word. Make the sounds with me. B, I, G. That's a funny looking G, right? B, I, G. Big. The big, here's a color word, you know what that is. It starts with an O, orange, Splot. The Big Orange Splot. It's by Daniel Manus Pinkwater. The Big Orange Splot. Mr. Plumbean lived on a street where all the houses were the same. He liked it that way. So did everybody else on Mr. Plumbean's street. This is a neat street, they would say. A seagull flew over Mr. Plumbean's house. He was carrying a can of bright orange paint. No one knows why. And he dropped the can, no one knows why, right over Mr. Plumbean's house. You can see what happened. It made a big orange splot on Mr. Plumbean's house. Ooh, too bad, everybody said. Mr. Plumbean will have to paint his house again. I suppose I will, said Mr. Plumbean. But he didn't paint his house right away. He looked at the big orange splot for a long time. Then he went about his business. The neighbors got tired of seeing that big orange splot. Someone said, Mr. Plumbean, we wish you'd get around to painting your house. Okay, said Mr. Plumbean. He got some blue paint and some white paint, and that night he got busy. He painted at night because it was cooler. When the paint was gone, the roof was blue. The walls were white, and the big orange splot was still there. Then he got some more paint. He got red paint, yellow paint, green paint, and purple paint. In the morning, the other people on the street came out of their houses. Their houses were all the same, but Mr. Plumbean's house was like a rainbow. It was like a jungle. It was like an explosion. There was the big orange splot, and there were little orange splots. There were stripes. There were pictures of elephants and lions and pretty girls and steam shovels. These people said, Plumbean has popped his cork, flipped his wig, blown his stack, and dropped his stopper. That means they think he went kind of crazy or nuts. They went away muttering. That day, Mr. Plumbean bought carpenter's tools. That night, he built a tower on top of his roof, and he painted a clock on the tower. Ooh, that's cool, isn't it? The next day, the people said, Plumbean has gushed his mush, lost his marbles, and slipped his hawser. They decided they would pretend not to notice. They're thinking, boy, this guy has gone crazy. But what a cool looking house, right? Would it be fun to live in a house like that? That very night, Mr. Plumbean got a truck full of green things. He planted palm trees, baobabs, thorn bushes, onions, and frangipani. In the morning, he bought a hammock and an alligator. When the other people came out of their houses, they saw Mr. Plumbean swinging in a hammock. Between two palm trees, they saw an alligator lying in the grass. Mr. Plumbean was drinking lemonade. Do you see his hammock? A hammock is like a little swing that you can put between two trees. Plumbean has gone too far. This used to be a neat street. Plumbean, what have you done to your house? The people shouted. My house is me, and I am it. My house is where I like to be, and it looks like all my dreams, Mr. Plumbean said. The people went away. They asked the man who lived next door to Mr. Plumbean to go and have a talk with him. Tell him that we all liked it here before he changed his house. Tell him that his house has to be the same as ours so we can have a neat street. The man went to see Mr. Plumbean that evening. They sat under the palm trees, drinking lemonade and talking all night long. That looks pretty pleasant, right? Early the next morning, the man went out to get lumber and rope and nails and paint. When the people came out of their houses, they saw a red and yellow ship next door to the house of Mr. Plumbean. Whoa, what a cool house that is, huh? You must like sailing a lot or boating. Well, look at that. "What have you done to your house?" they shouted at the man. "My house is me, and I am it. My house is where I like to be, and it looks like all my dreams," said the man who had always loved ships. "He's just like Plumbean," the people said. "He's got bees in his bonnet, bats in his belfry, and knots in his noodle." Then one by one, they went to see Mr. Plumbean late at night. They would sit under the palm trees and drink lemonade and talk about their dreams. And whenever anybody visited Mr. Plumbean's house, the very next day, that person would set about changing his own house to fit his dreams. How cool is that? It's like a hot air balloon house. I wonder if it can actually float up and away. These stakes in the ground right here nail it down so it doesn't go off. Ooh, and look at that one. That's cool. That one's like a castle. It's got a moat around it that's like a river, and this must be a drawbridge that comes down to let people in and out of the house so they don't get wet. Whoa. Whenever a stranger came to the street of Mr. Plumbean and his neighbors, the stranger would say, "This is not a neat street." Then all the people would say, "Our street is us, and we are it. Our street is where we like to be, and it looks like all our dreams." And that is the end of the big orange Splot. If you could make a house that looked like your dreams, I wonder what you would draw. Maybe you can go get a piece of paper and some crayons or markers or even just a pencil and draw what your house would look like if it were your dream house. Maybe it would have animals near it. Maybe it would have an amusement park with a roller coaster on it. Maybe it would be by a beach. Well, you can think about that and have fun drawing your dream house. See you next time. Bye-bye.